The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Luxe Ballroom cast fractured light across 500 of Manhattan's most powerful elite. But Naomi Williams felt invisible. At 7.5 months pregnant with twins, her body had become a spectacle she couldn't hide. Her emerald gown, custom designed to accommodate her swollen belly, drew eyes she'd spent years learning to avoid. The April evening was unseasonably warm, and despite the ballroom's aggressive air conditioning, Naomi felt heat radiating from her skin, her lower back aching with the constant pressure of carrying 2 lives. She stood near the dessert table, one hand pressed against the small of her back, the other resting protectively on her rounded stomach, where her daughters kicked and shifted with restless energy. The Spring Horizon Charity Gala was supposed to be her incognito appearance. No press, no announcements, just a quiet opportunity to meet James Chen in person to finalize the partnership that would change both their companies forever. But James was running late, trapped in traffic according to his apologetic text, and Naomi was left navigating a room full of people who had no idea who she was. That was intentional. For 3 years, Naomi had kept her profile deliberately low, conducting business through intermediaries, attending meetings virtually, building Williams Chen Technologies into a defense contracting powerhouse while remaining a ghost to the industry's social circuits. Security concerns, she'd told her board. Privacy preferences. The truth was simpler and more complicated. A black woman running a company valued at $8 billion attracted attention she didn't want. Skepticism, assumptions, the constant exhausting need to prove she belonged in rooms where people looked surprised she wasn't serving the champagne. If you're loving this story of power and justice, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Now, back to the story. A sharp contraction tightened across Naomi's belly, not labor. Dr. Martinez had assured her these Braxton Hicks contractions were normal, but uncomfortable enough to make her catch her breath. She reached for a glass of sparkling water from a passing server's tray, grateful for the cool liquid against her suddenly dry throat. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind her, sharp and imperious. "You're blocking the dessert display." Naomi turned slowly, her movements careful. The woman standing there was perhaps 28, blonde hair styled in the kind of perfect waves that cost $1,000 to achieve, wearing a white Valentino gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her blue eyes were cold, assessing, taking in Naomi's pregnant form with obvious distaste. "I'm sorry," Naomi said quietly, stepping aside. "I didn't realize I was in the way." The blonde woman didn't move. "Are you supposed to be working tonight? Because the staff entrance is in the back and you really shouldn't be out here mingling with the guests in your condition." The words landed like slaps. Naomi felt her spine straighten automatically, that old familiar anger rising in her chest. Anger she'd learned to control, to channel, to weaponize when necessary. "I'm not staff. I'm a guest." "Really?" The word dripped with skepticism. "And who exactly are you a guest of?" Before Naomi could respond, another woman appeared, this one older, probably in her late 50s, wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country's GDP. She looked between Naomi and the blonde with obvious concern. "Madison, what's going on?" "Mother, I was just explaining to this woman that the staff shouldn't be out here." Madison's voice was loud enough to carry to nearby conversations, and Naomi watched heads begin to turn. "It's inappropriate, especially in her condition. She's clearly very pregnant and shouldn't be on her feet serving anyway." The older woman, Madison's mother, studied Naomi with the same cold assessment. "Madison's right, dear. If you need to sit down, there's a break room for the catering staff. But you really shouldn't be out here among the donors." Naomi felt the familiar weight of assumptions settling around her shoulders. In her 3 years running Williams Chen Technologies, she'd faced skepticism from Pentagon generals, condescension from Silicon Valley investors, and outright hostility from competitors who couldn't believe a 32-year-old black woman from Detroit had built an AI defense contracting empire. But this was different. This was pure, unvarnished prejudice delivered with the confidence of people who'd never faced consequences for their cruelty. "I understand there's been a misunderstanding," Naomi said, keeping her voice level despite the fury building in her chest. "I'm not staff. I'm here as a guest, and I'd appreciate being treated as such." Madison laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. "A guest? Dressed like that? Please, that dress looks like something from a maternity consignment shop. And those shoes," she gestured at Naomi's simple black flats, the only footwear that didn't make her swollen feet scream after an hour of standing, "are clearly not appropriate for this event." "Madison?" A male voice cut through the tension, deep and authoritative. "What are you doing?" Naomi turned to see a man approaching, perhaps 35, with dark hair and sharp features that reminded her of photographs she'd seen in Forbes and TechCrunch. Marcus Fairmont. Her stomach dropped. The billionaire CEO of Fairmont Industries, the company desperately trying to secure the $5 billion Department of Defense contract that Naomi controlled. The contract negotiations had been ongoing for 6 months, handled entirely through lawyers and intermediaries. Fairmont Industries had the manufacturing capability and the political connections, but Williams Chen Technologies held the proprietary AI algorithms the Pentagon wanted. The partnership was supposed to be announced next week, a merger of capabilities that would make both companies indispensable to national defense infrastructure. Marcus Fairmont had no idea who Naomi was. She'd made sure of that, conducting all negotiations through her COO, maintaining the careful anonymity that had protected her for 3 years. And now she stood in a ballroom, watching his sister insult her, while he looked on with confused concern. "Marcus, I was just helping this woman find her way back to the staff areas," Madison said smoothly. "She seems lost." "I'm not lost," Naomi interjected, her patience finally fraying. "And I'm not staff. I'm here as a guest of the Horizon Foundation, and I'd appreciate being left alone." Madison's eyes narrowed. "You know what I think? I think you're one of those people who crashes charity events to steal jewelry or handbags. It happens more than you'd think, and security should really be more careful about who they let in." She raised her voice, addressing the small crowd that had gathered. "Has anyone lost their invitation? Because I'm quite certain this woman doesn't belong here." The humiliation burned through Naomi like acid. She'd spent her entire life fighting to belong in spaces where people looked at her skin color and assumed she was there to serve. She'd built a company that employed 3,000 people and generated revenue that dwarfed most of the businesses represented in this ballroom. She controlled technology that could shift the balance of global military power. And she was being accused of theft at a charity gala while 7.5 months pregnant. "Madison, that's enough." Marcus Fairmont's voice carried warning now. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene? She's the one who doesn't belong here." Madison turned to her brother, her voice rising. "Marcus, she's clearly not a donor. Look at her. She's obviously here under false pretenses. And I'm not going to stand by while someone takes advantage of the Horizon Foundation's generosity." Naomi felt her daughters kick hard against her ribs, as if responding to their mother's stress. She pressed her hand more firmly against her belly, feeling the familiar protective instinct rising. These girls would be born into a world that would judge them before they spoke a word, that would question their right to exist in rooms like this one. And Naomi would be damned if she let them grow up watching their mother accept this treatment. "You're right about one thing," Naomi said quietly, her voice steady despite the fury building in her chest. "I don't belong here. Not because I'm not wealthy enough or connected enough or dressed appropriately enough, but because I don't belong in any room that would tolerate this kind of cruelty." She turned to leave, her exit planned and dignified. But Madison wasn't finished. "Oh, please, spare us the victim act," Madison called after her. "You're probably planning to sue for discrimination or something. That's what people like you do, isn't it? Cry racism when you're caught somewhere you don't belong." The word stopped Naomi cold. People like you. 3 words that contained centuries of assumptions, prejudice, and the casual cruelty of people who'd never faced consequences for their words. She turned back slowly, her hand still pressed against her belly, and looked at Madison Fairmont with the full weight of her position and power. "People like me?" Naomi repeated softly. "You mean people who built billion-dollar companies from nothing? People who hold patents that are revolutionizing artificial intelligence? People who control contracts that could make or break entire corporations?" She paused, watching confusion flicker across Madison's face. "Or did you mean something else?" Marcus Fairmont stepped forward, his expression shifting from confusion to growing concern. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" Before Naomi could answer, her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out and saw a text from James Chen. "Just arrived. Where are you? The lobby?" Naomi looked at the message, then at the Fairmont siblings, then at the crowd of Manhattan's elite who'd watched this entire exchange without a single person stepping forward to defend her. She thought about the contract sitting on her desk back at Williams Chen Technologies headquarters, the one that would cement Fairmont Industries' future and secure hundreds of jobs. She thought about the due diligence reports she'd read about Marcus Fairmont. Brilliant engineer, ruthless businessman, known for his integrity in an industry built on manipulation and backdoor deals. She thought about how he'd stood by while his sister hurled racism at a pregnant woman without intervening until the scene became too public to ignore. "My name," Naomi said clearly, "is Naomi Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of Williams Chen Technologies. And as of this moment, the partnership agreement between our companies is under review." The color drained from Marcus Fairmont's face. Behind him, Madison looked confused, clearly not understanding the implications of what she'd just done. Around them, the crowd erupted in whispers, phones appearing as people frantically Googled Naomi's name, confirmation spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. "Ms. Williams?" Marcus's voice was careful now, controlled. "I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If we could just—" "There's been no misunderstanding, Mr. Fairmont." Naomi's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "Your sister made herself perfectly clear, and so have you, by your silence." She tucked her phone back into her clutch and turned toward the ballroom exit. "My lawyers will be in touch." She walked away with her head high, her hand pressed protectively against her belly, leaving behind a room full of people who were just beginning to understand what Madison Fairmont's cruelty had cost her family. What none of them knew was that Naomi Williams didn't make idle threats. And the review she'd just mentioned would reveal truths about Fairmont Industries that would make tonight's humiliation look like a minor inconvenience. The contract between Williams Chen Technologies and Fairmont Industries wasn't just worth $5 billion. It was the only thing keeping Fairmont Industries from bankruptcy. And Naomi had just started pulling the thread that would unravel everything Marcus Fairmont had spent 15 years building. Behind her, Madison Fairmont was still talking, still justifying, still completely unaware that she'd just destroyed her family's future with 3 words. People like you. Naomi Williams had built an empire by being underestimated. Now she would teach the Fairmonts what happened when you mistook quiet power for weakness. The war had just begun, and they had no idea who they were fighting. The Uber ride back to Naomi's Tribeca penthouse took 23 minutes, but each one felt like an eternity. She sat in the back seat with her hand pressed against her belly, feeling her daughter's restless movements, their kicks and tumbles, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, kept glancing in the rearview mirror with obvious concern. "You okay, honey? You need me to take you to a hospital?" "I'm fine," Naomi said, though her voice shook slightly. "Just tired. Just humiliated. Just furious. Just 7.5 months pregnant and tired of fighting battles she'd thought she'd left behind years ago." Her phone had been buzzing non-stop since she left the gala. Texts from James Chen increasingly panicked. Calls from her COO, Tasha Reynolds. 3 missed calls from her attorney. 2 from board members who'd somehow already heard about the incident. The tech and defense industries moved fast, but Manhattan high society moved faster when there was scandal to spread. Naomi ignored them all. She needed time to think, to process, to decide exactly how she wanted to handle what had just happened. The anger was still white-hot in her chest, mixing with the exhaustion that had become her constant companion over the past few months. Carrying twins had transformed her body into something she barely recognized. Swollen feet, constant back pain, the inability to sleep more than 2 hours without needing to pee, and the ever-present anxiety about whether she was strong enough to do this alone. She'd been alone for 6 months now, ever since the morning she'd told Trevor Mason, her boyfriend of 3 years, that she was pregnant with twins, and he'd looked at her like she'd just announced a terminal diagnosis. "Twins?" he'd said, his face going pale. "Naomi, we never talked about kids. You know I'm not ready for that kind of commitment." She'd known Trevor wasn't ready. What she hadn't known was that he'd never be ready. That he'd been comfortable dating the CEO of a billion-dollar company, but terrified of being the father to her children. He'd moved out 3 days later, taking his things while she was in a board meeting, leaving behind only a note that said he hoped she'd understand and that he'd always care about her. 6 months later, she understood perfectly. Trevor had wanted the prestige of dating Naomi Williams, the access to her world, the reflected glory of her success. But he hadn't wanted the reality of her, a woman who worked 80-hour weeks, who carried the weight of 3,000 employees' livelihoods, who was now carrying his twin daughters and doing it completely alone. The Uber pulled up to her building, and Naomi carefully extracted herself from the back seat, her movements slow and deliberate. The doorman, Marcus, no relation to Marcus Fairmont, thankfully, rushed to help her. "Ms. Williams, are you all right? Can I get you anything?" "I'm fine, Marcus. Thank you." She managed to smile for him, this man who'd seen her come home crying more times than she cared to admit, who always had a kind word and never asked questions. Just a long night. The elevator ride to the penthouse gave her 60 seconds of silence. 60 seconds to press her forehead against the cool metal wall and let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. Madison Fairmont had humiliated her in front of 500 people. Marcus Fairmont had stood by and let it happen. And now, Naomi held the power to destroy everything they'd built, everything they needed to survive. The question was, what did she want to do with that power? The penthouse was dark and silent when she entered. 6,500 square feet of modern luxury that felt cavernous and empty. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan's glittering skyline. But Naomi barely noticed. She kicked off her shoes, feeling immediate relief as her swollen feet sank into the plush carpet, and made her way to the nursery. She'd finished decorating it last week with Tasha's help. 2 cribs, white with soft pink bedding, a rocking chair by the window, shelves already filled with books Naomi had been collecting. Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, representation mattering even before her daughters could read. The walls were painted a soft sage green, calming and peaceful. Everything Naomi wanted her girl's world to be. She stood in the doorway, one hand on her belly, and let herself imagine for just a moment what it would be like. 2 babies crying at 3 in the morning, diaper changes and bottle feedings, and the terrifying responsibility of keeping 2 tiny humans alive. Doing it all alone, because Trevor hadn't wanted the commitment and Naomi's parents were dead. A car accident when she was 22 that had left her an orphan and alone in the world. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked at it. Marcus Fairmont had her personal cell number somehow. The text was brief. Ms. Williams, please allow me to apologize in person. What happened tonight was unconscionable. I take full responsibility. Naomi stared at the message, reading it 3 times. Full responsibility. The words were easy to type, harder to mean. She'd built Williams Chen Technologies on the principle that actions mattered more than words. That integrity meant following through even when it was difficult or expensive or personally costly. Marcus Fairmont had stood in that ballroom and watched his sister accuse a pregnant woman of theft without saying a word until the scene had already escalated. That wasn't the action of a man who took responsibility. That was the action of someone who cared more about appearances than ethics. She typed back. Your apology is noted. My lawyers will be in touch regarding the contract review. Another text came through immediately. Please, can we meet tomorrow? I'll come to your office anywhere you want. Just give me a chance to explain. Naomi didn't respond. Instead, she called Tasha Reynolds, her COO and the closest thing she had to family since her parents died. Tasha answered on the first ring. Oh, thank God. Naomi, what the hell happened? I've had 6 calls from board members, and James Chen is losing his mind thinking the whole deal is falling apart. It might be. Naomi walked to her bedroom, already unzipping the emerald gown that had cost $3,000 and now felt like a costume she'd worn to play a role she'd never auditioned for again. Madison Fairmont mistook me for catering staff and accused me of crashing the gala to steal from guests. Marcus Fairmont stood there and let it happen. The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Then, she what? You heard me. That racist bitch. Tasha's voice was shaking with fury. Tell me you've already called our lawyers. Tell me we're suing her into oblivion. Naomi stepped out of the dress and reached for her favorite silk pajamas, the ones that still fit over her massive belly. I'm thinking bigger than a lawsuit. How much bigger? The Fairmont Industries contract. What happens if we pull out? Another pause, this one longer. When Tasha spoke again, her voice was careful. Naomi, that's a $5 billion deal. Pulling out would cost us. I know what it would cost us. But what would it cost them? She heard Tasha moving, probably to her computer. Keys clicking. Give me a second. More clicking. Okay, based on the due diligence we did 6 months ago. Jesus Christ. What? Fairmont Industries has been bleeding cash for the past 3 years. Marcus made some bad bets on autonomous vehicle technology that never panned out. They've got debt service of $800 million annually, and their only significant contract up for renewal is with the Navy, which expires in 6 months. Tasha's voice grew quieter. "Naomi, if we pull out of this deal, Fairmont Industries files for bankruptcy within 18 months. Maybe sooner." Naomi sat on the edge of her bed, processing this information. She'd known Fairmont Industries needed the contract. That was obvious from how aggressively they'd negotiated. But she hadn't realized they were that desperate, that vulnerable. Marcus Fairmont's company wasn't just depending on this partnership. It was the only thing keeping them alive. How many employees does Fairmont Industries have? 12,000 direct employees, another 30,000 in their supply chain, 42,000 people whose livelihoods depended on the contract Naomi controlled. 42,000 families who would suffer if she pulled out because Madison Fairmont was a racist asshole, and Marcus Fairmont was too cowardly to stop her. "Shit," Naomi whispered. "Yeah." Tasha was quiet for a moment. "Look, I get it. What happened tonight was appalling, and those people deserve consequences. But destroying an entire company because of Madison Fairmont's behavior, that's a lot of collateral damage." Naomi knew Tasha was right. She'd built James Chen Technologies on principles that mattered to her. Ethical business practices, treating employees with dignity, using her power responsibly. Bankrupting Fairmont Industries to punish Madison would destroy 42,000 innocent people's lives. That wasn't justice. That was just cruelty in a different form. But letting Madison's behavior go unpunished, letting Marcus off the hook for his complicity, that felt wrong too. Like accepting that people like the Fairmonts could treat people like her however they wanted without consequences. That her humiliation was just the price of doing business in a world built by and for people who looked like them. "Set up a meeting for tomorrow morning," Naomi said finally. 9 a.m., our conference room. Marcus Fairmont only. And Tasha? I want every piece of dirt we have on Fairmont Industries ready. Every financial irregularity, every failed project, every risk factor we identified during due diligence. Everything. You're going to war. I'm going to negotiate from a position of strength. There's a difference. After hanging up with Tasha, Naomi lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her daughters kicked and shifted, running out of room in her crowded belly. In 10 weeks, maybe sooner if they came early like twins often did, she'd be a mother. Responsible for 2 tiny humans who would depend on her for everything. 2 black girls who would grow up in a world that would judge them before they opened their mouths, that would question their intelligence and their achievements, and their right to exist in rooms full of people who looked like Madison Fairmont. What kind of world did Naomi want to create for her daughters? One where cruelty went unpunished because it was easier not to make waves? Or one where accountability mattered, even when it was expensive and complicated and painful? Her phone buzzed with another text. This time it wasn't Marcus Fairmont. It was her attorney, Richard Park. "Naomi, just saw the video. We need to talk ASAP. This is bigger than you realize." "Video!" Naomi's stomach dropped. She opened Twitter and saw her name trending. #Naomi Williams. #Fairmont Gala. #Tech CEO. The top tweet included a video clip, obviously filmed on someone's phone. The quality was shaky, but the audio was crystal clear. Madison Fairmont's voice, sharp and imperious. "You're probably planning to sue for discrimination or something. That's what people like you do, isn't it?" The video had been viewed 2.3 million times in the past hour. The comments were a mix of outrage, support, and the predictable racist garbage that appeared whenever a black woman made headlines. But what caught Naomi's attention was the blue checkmark accounts, journalists, activists, celebrities, all sharing the video with commentary about systemic racism and the treatment of black women in corporate America. This wasn't just a private humiliation anymore. This was a public spectacle. And Madison Fairmont's words were being broadcast to millions of people who would form opinions about what happened based on a 60-second video clip. Naomi called Richard Park. "Tell me," she said when he answered. "You've gone viral. Every major news outlet is reaching out for comment. The Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive interview. CNN wants you on tomorrow night. This is a national story now, Naomi. Because a white woman called me a thief? Because a white billionaire's sister racially profiled a black pregnant CEO at a charity gala and got caught on camera." Richard's voice was gentle but firm. "This hits every hot-button issue right now. Race, class, pregnancy discrimination, tech industry culture. You're the face of something bigger than what happened tonight." Naomi closed her eyes, feeling the weight of unwanted responsibility settling on her shoulders. She'd never wanted to be the face of anything. She'd built her career on staying out of the spotlight, on letting her work speak for itself. Now she was Twitter's main character, whether she wanted to be or not. What do I do? That depends. Do you want to control the narrative or let other people control it for you? Naomi thought about the video, about Madison's sneering face and her own quiet dignity in response. She thought about her daughters, about the world they'd inherit. She thought about the 42,000 Fairmont Industries employees who didn't deserve to lose their jobs because of Madison's cruelty. I want to control it, but I also want consequences. Real ones, not just a social media pile-on that blows over in a week. Then here's what we do. Richard's voice shifted into strategist mode. Tomorrow morning, you meet with Marcus Fairmont. Make him sweat. Make him understand exactly what he stands to lose. Then, tomorrow afternoon, you do one exclusive interview. I recommend Gayle King at CBS. You tell your story. You're gracious but firm about the racism you experienced. And you make it clear that this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. And the contract? That's your leverage. You don't have to destroy Fairmont Industries to win this, Naomi. You just have to make Marcus Fairmont understand that his sister's behavior will have consequences, and that those consequences will be proportional to his response. After hanging up, Naomi lay in the darkness, listening to the city sounds filtering through her windows. Somewhere out there, Marcus Fairmont was probably in crisis mode with his own lawyers and PR team. Somewhere out there, Madison Fairmont was probably oblivious to the firestorm she'd created, or worse, doubling down on her justifications. And somewhere out there, 42,000 people were going about their lives, unaware that their futures hung in the balance of a decision Naomi Williams would make in the next 24 hours. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Marcus Fairmont. I saw the video. I have no excuse for my silence. Please give me a chance to make this right. Naomi read the message 3 times. Make this right. As if there was a way to undo the humiliation, to erase the feeling of standing in that ballroom while people she'd never met questioned her right to exist in that space. As if an apology could compensate for the casual cruelty of people who'd never faced consequences for their words. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the reason people like Madison Fairmont felt comfortable hurling racism at pregnant strangers was because people like Marcus Fairmont never made them face consequences. Maybe this was Naomi's chance to break that cycle, not just for herself, but for every black woman who'd been mistaken for staff, questioned, dismissed, or insulted in spaces where they had every right to be. She typed, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Williams Chen Technologies headquarters. Come alone. The reply came immediately. Thank you. I'll be there. Naomi set her phone aside and placed both hands on her belly, feeling her daughter's movements. "Your mama's about to teach some people a lesson they should have learned a long time ago," she whispered. "But we're going to do it the right way. Not with cruelty. With power used responsibly. With consequences that fit the crime. With dignity intact." One of the twins kicked hard against her hand, as if in agreement. Tomorrow morning, Marcus Fairmont would walk into her conference room as a supplicant, not a partner. He would sit across from her and understand, perhaps for the first time in his privileged life, what it felt like to be powerless, to need something desperately from someone who had every reason to refuse. And then Naomi Williams would show him mercy. Not because he deserved it, but because 42,000 innocent people did. Because her daughters would inherit a world, and she wanted it to be one where accountability didn't require cruelty, where justice didn't demand vengeance. But first, Marcus Fairmont needed to understand exactly what his sister had cost him. Exactly how close he'd come to losing everything because of 3 words: people like you. Naomi closed her eyes and let herself drift toward sleep, her hands still resting on her belly, her mind already planning tomorrow's meeting. She'd built Williams Chen Technologies by being underestimated, by letting people assume she was less threatening than she was until it was too late for them to adjust. Marcus Fairmont was about to learn that lesson the hard way. And by the time she was done with him, he'd understand that the quiet, dignified, pregnant woman his sister had humiliated wasn't someone who could be dismissed or ignored. She was someone who held his entire future in her hands. And she was just getting started. Marcus Fairmont arrived at Williams Chen Technologies headquarters at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, which Naomi suspected was a calculated move. Punctuality as apology, eagerness as penance. She watched him on the security monitor as he checked in with the front desk, noting the dark circles under his eyes, the expensive suit that couldn't hide his exhaustion, the way his shoulders carried tension like a physical weight. Good. Let him be uncomfortable. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt standing in that ballroom. "He's here," Tasha said from the doorway of Naomi's office, her expression carefully neutral. "Conference room is set up. I've got coffee, water, and the complete financial analysis you requested. Also, legal is standing by if you need them." "I won't need legal for this meeting." Naomi stood carefully, her hand automatically going to her lower back. She'd barely slept, her daughters deciding 3 a.m. was an excellent time for a dance party against her ribcage. "This is just a conversation. A conversation where you hold all the cards and he knows it." Tasha smiled grimly. "I've been waiting my entire career to watch you destroy a man like Marcus Fairmont. I'm not destroying him. I'm educating him. Even better." The Williams Chen Technologies conference room occupied the entire 50th floor corner of their midtown building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of both the Hudson River and Central Park. Naomi had designed the space to intimidate. The massive glass table, the leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent, the subtle displays of power in the patents framed on the walls, each one representing technology that had changed modern warfare. Marcus Fairmont stood when she entered, and Naomi noted how his eyes went immediately to her belly, then quickly away, as if looking at her pregnancy made him uncomfortable. More than uncomfortable. Guilty. As if her condition was a reproach to his behavior last night. "Ms. Williams, thank you for seeing me." His voice was deeper in person than she'd expected, carrying the controlled cadence of someone who'd spent years in boardrooms where the wrong word could cost millions. "I know you have no reason to grant me this meeting, and I'm grateful for your time." Naomi settled into the chair at the head of the table, deliberately not offering him a seat yet, Let him stand. Let him wait. You have 30 minutes, Mr. Fairmont. I suggest you use them wisely. He remained standing, his hands clasped in front of him like a penitent. I want to start by apologizing for my sister's behavior last night. What Madison said to you was inexcusable, racist, and cruel. There's no justification for it. But, Naomi prompted, because she could hear the unspoken word hanging in the air. But I need you to understand that her words don't represent Fairmont Industries' values or my values. Madison has always been. He paused, choosing his words carefully, privileged in ways that have insulated her from understanding how her words affect others. That's not an excuse. It's context. Context. Naomi repeated the word flatly. Your sister accused a pregnant black woman of being a thief at a charity gala, and you're offering me context? I'm offering you the truth, which is that Madison has no role in Fairmont Industries. She's not an employee, not a board member, not involved in any business decisions. She's my sister, and I love her. But she doesn't speak for my company. She spoke for you last night. Naomi leaned forward slightly, ignoring the twinge in her back. You stood there, Mr. Fairmont. You watched your sister humiliate me, question my right to exist in that space, and you said nothing. Not until the scene had already escalated and other people were paying attention. That wasn't an oversight. That was a choice. The words landed like physical blows. Marcus Fairmont's jaw tightened, and for the first time, Naomi saw genuine emotion crack through his corporate composure. Shame. You're right. I should have stopped her immediately. I should have defended you, and I didn't. That's on me, and I'm deeply sorry. Why didn't you? The question surprised even Naomi. She'd meant to maintain professional distance, to treat this like any other negotiation. But something in his genuine regret made her curious about the man beneath the CEO persona. Marcus finally sat down, not waiting for permission now, as if standing had become too exhausting. Honestly, I was shocked. I've watched Madison be thoughtless and entitled my entire life, but I'd never seen her be openly cruel like that. By the time my brain caught up to what was happening, you were already defending yourself with more grace than the situation deserved. He met her eyes directly. And then you told us who you were, and I realized I'd just destroyed the most important partnership my company has ever pursued, because I was too stunned to stop my sister from being a bigot. The honesty was unexpected. Naomi had prepared for deflection, for corporate speak designed to minimize and redirect. Instead, Marcus Fairmont was sitting across from her, admitting that his family's behavior had potentially destroyed his company's future. It didn't excuse what happened, but it was more accountability than she'd anticipated. You saw the video, she said. It wasn't a question. Everyone saw the video. My PR team has fielded 300 media requests in the past 12 hours. The board is in crisis mode. Our shareholders are panicking. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its careful styling. Madison's Twitter mentions are so toxic that she's had to delete all her social media accounts. My mother is horrified. My father wants me to hire a crisis management firm. And me? I'm sitting here realizing that everything I've built over 15 years might collapse because I didn't have the courage to tell my sister to shut up when it mattered most. One of Naomi's daughters kicked hard against her ribs, sharp enough to make her wince. She pressed her hand against the spot, feeling the tiny foot pushing back. Marcus noticed, his expression shifting into concern. Are you all right? Do you need anything? I'm fine. They're just active this morning. Naomi shifted in her chair, trying to ease the pressure on her sciatic nerve. Twins. They're running out of room. Something softened in Marcus's face, a glimpse of humanity beneath the polished executive. That must be challenging, especially... He caught himself, but Naomi finished the sentence. Especially doing it alone? You can say it. I'm 7.5 months pregnant and single. It's not a secret. She met his gaze steadily. Their father decided he wasn't ready for the commitment. Apparently dating a CEO is acceptable, but co-parenting with one is too complicated. Then he's an idiot. The words came out before Marcus seemed to consider them. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. But any man who walks away from... He gestured at her, then seemed to realize how that might sound. From his responsibilities, his family, is making a catastrophic mistake. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Naomi had expected corporate apologies and strategic positioning, not this raw honesty about failure and responsibility. It complicated her carefully constructed anger, adding dimensions to Marcus Fairmont that she hadn't wanted to see. Tell me about Fairmont Industries, she said, changing the subject back to safer ground. Your financial position. And don't bother lying. I have your complete financial history in front of me. Marcus glanced at the folder Tasha had placed on the table, recognition flickering across his face. How much do you know? Everything. The autonomous vehicle division that hemorrhaged $2 billion over 3 years. The failed acquisition of Prometheus Systems, the debt service that's consuming 40% of your operating revenue, the Navy contract that expires in 6 months with no guarantee of renewal. Naomi ticked off each point with clinical precision. Without our partnership, Fairmont Industries has 18 months before you're forced to file for bankruptcy. Maybe less if your creditors get nervous and call their loans early. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus Fairmont stared at her with an expression caught between admiration and horror. You know, most people would use that information to extract concessions during negotiation. You're just laying it out there. I'm establishing reality. You need this partnership more than I do, considerably more. Which means you're not here as my equal, Mr. Fairmont. You're here as a supplicant. Naomi let that sink in before continuing. The question is, what are you willing to do to salvage this deal? Anything. The word came without hesitation. Name your terms. Anything? That's a dangerous promise to make. I have 12,000 direct employees and another 30,000 in my supply chain who depend on Fairmont Industries for their livelihoods. I have shareholders who've invested their retirement savings in my company. I have contracts with the Department of Defense that support national security interests. Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense. So yes, Ms. Williams, anything. Because this isn't about my pride or my ego anymore. This is about 42,000 families who will suffer if I let Madison's cruelty destroy what we've built. Naomi studied him for a long moment, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. But Marcus Fairmont's exhaustion was genuine. His concern for his employees real. She'd researched him extensively during the due diligence process. MIT educated, started Fairmont Industries at 21 with money borrowed from his grandfather, built it into a defense contracting powerhouse through innovation and aggressive expansion. Known for treating employees well, for ethical business practices in an industry rife with corruption. Not the kind of man who'd stand by while his sister hurled racism at strangers. Except he had stood by. And that contradiction was the puzzle she needed to solve. You said Madison has always been privileged in ways that insulated her from consequences, Naomi said carefully. What did you mean? Marcus was quiet for a moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. Our father built his fortune in real estate. Commercial properties, high-end residential developments. Very old money New York, very traditional values. Madison grew up being told that people like her belonged in certain spaces, and people like... He caught himself again, but Naomi nodded for him to continue. And people who looked different didn't. I tried to push back against that programming, but Madison absorbed it completely. She's never worked, never had to earn anything, never faced a situation where her assumptions about the world were challenged. And you? Did you absorb the same programming? I thought I'd overcome it. Marcus's voice was bitter. I went to MIT, worked alongside people from every background imaginable, built my company on merit and innovation, not family connections, hired the most talented engineers regardless of their last names or where they went to prep school. I genuinely believed I was different from my parents' generation. He met her eyes. Last night proved I'm not. When it mattered, when I should have stood up to my sister, I froze. Because somewhere deep down, I'm still programmed to protect family over strangers, even when family is clearly, obviously wrong. The self-awareness was startling. Naomi had expected defensiveness, justifications, the careful language of PR training. Instead, Marcus Fairmont was dissecting his own failure with surgical precision. It didn't excuse what happened, but it explained it in ways that made him more human and less monster. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard Park. CBS confirmed. Gayle King interview at 4 p.m. today. Are we proceeding? Naomi typed back. Yes, proceeding with interview. Marcus noticed her distraction. Media interview? Gayle King, CBS, this afternoon. Naomi set her phone down. Your sister made this a national story. I'm going to control the narrative before someone else does it for me. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Respect, maybe, or recognition that he was dealing with someone who understood power dynamics as well as he did. That's smart. What will you say about the contract? That depends on this conversation. Naomi shifted again, trying to ease the pressure on her back. The Braxton Hicks contractions had been coming more frequently this morning. Not labor, but uncomfortable enough to be distracting. Here's what I want from you, Mr. Fairmont. I want Madison to issue a public apology. Not a corporate statement written by lawyers, but a genuine acknowledgement of what she said and why it was wrong. I want her to donate $1 million to organizations that support Black women in technology. And I want her banned from all Fairmont Industries events. Permanently. Marcus nodded slowly. Done. What else? I want you to implement mandatory diversity and inclusion training for everyone at Fairmont Industries, including yourself and your entire executive team. Real training, not a 1-hour video people can sleep through. I want you to hire a chief diversity officer who reports directly to the board. And I want quarterly audits of your hiring and promotion practices to ensure you're not just talking about equality, you're practicing it. Agreed. Anything else? Naomi paused, watching Marcus Fairmont carefully. He'd agreed to her demands without hesitation, without trying to negotiate or minimize. Either he was desperate enough to promise anything, or he genuinely understood that what happened last night required systemic change, not just punishment for Madison. One more thing, she said quietly. I want to know why you're really here. Not the corporate answer about saving your company. The real reason. Marcus was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was a housekeeper in the 1950s and 60s. She worked for wealthy families in Manhattan, raised their children while her own kids were in daycare. She used to tell me stories about how those families treated her, the casual cruelty, the assumptions about her intelligence, her worth. She had come home exhausted and angry, and there was nothing she could do because she needed the money, and those families had all the power. He looked at Naomi directly. Last night, watching you stand in that ballroom while my sister accused you of theft, I heard my grandmother's voice in my head. All her stories about being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like you didn't have the right to exist in spaces white people had claimed. And I stood there and did nothing. Just like those families' children did nothing, while their parents treated my grandmother like she was less than human. I'm here because I need to be better than that. Not for your forgiveness. I'm not entitled to that. But for my own conscience. Because if I can't stand up to my sister when she's clearly wrong, what kind of man am I? The confession hung in the air between them. Naomi felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight anger she'd carried since last night. Marcus Fairmont wasn't just apologizing. He was offering vulnerability, sharing family history that explained why last night had cut him so deeply. It didn't erase what happened, but it added context that mattered. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman, Naomi said softly. She was. She died when I was 15, but I think about her every day, especially when I'm making decisions about how to run my company, how to treat people. Marcus's smile was sad. She'd be ashamed of me right now. She'd tell me I should have been better, done better. And she'd be right. Another contraction tightened across Naomi's belly, stronger than before. She breathed through it, her hand pressed against her stomach. Marcus noticed immediately, concern flashing across his face. Ms. Williams, are you sure you're all right? Should I call someone? I'm fine. Just Braxton Hicks. Practice contractions. Dr. Martinez said they're normal. The contraction eased. But Naomi felt a new awareness of her body's limits. She'd been working 80-hour weeks throughout her pregnancy, pushing herself to prove she could build a company and carry children simultaneously. But sitting here negotiating the future of both companies while her daughters kicked and contracted, she realized something had to give. We're going to proceed with the partnership, she said finally, with modifications to the terms. Relief flooded Marcus's face. Thank you. Whatever modifications you need. I'm not finished. Naomi cut him off. The partnership proceeds. But I want a personal guarantee from you. Not from Fairmont Industries. From you, Marcus Fairmont, individually. If your company implements the diversity initiatives I outlined, if Madison follows through on the apology and donation, if I see genuine systemic change over the next year, then we continue as planned. But if this is all performative, if nothing actually changes, then I reserve the right to pull out of the partnership with 30 days' notice. And you personally will be liable for damages. How much in damages? $2 billion, payable to organizations supporting women of color in STEM fields. Marcus went pale. That would bankrupt me personally. Everything I own, everything I've built. Exactly. I'm betting $2 billion that you mean what you say about change, about being better, about honoring your grandmother's memory. Naomi met his eyes steadily. If you're not willing to put everything on the line for your principles, then your principles aren't worth much. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Marcus Fairmont stared at her, and Naomi saw him calculating, weighing risk against reward, pride against necessity. $2 billion was more than his net worth. It would destroy him financially, permanently. All right, he said finally. I'll sign the personal guarantee. Just like that? Just like that? Marcus's smile was slight but genuine. You're right. If I'm not willing to bet everything on my ability to change, then I'm not serious about changing. And Ms. Williams, after last night, I'm very serious. Naomi nodded, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and surprise. She'd expected more resistance, more negotiation. Instead, Marcus Fairmont had agreed to terms that could destroy him personally if he failed to follow through. Either he was the most desperate man in New York, or he genuinely believed he could create the change he promised. Tasha will send over the revised contract language by end of day, Naomi said. We'll announce the partnership next week as originally planned, with a joint statement about our commitment to diversity and inclusion in the defense technology sector. Thank you. Marcus stood, extending his hand across the table. I know you didn't have to give me this chance, and I won't waste it. Naomi shook his hand, noting the firmness of his grip, the calluses that suggested he still worked with his hands despite being a CEO. His palm was warm against hers, the contact lasting a moment longer than professionally necessary. She felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. Not attraction exactly, but recognition of shared intensity, matched determination. She released his hand quickly, unsettled by the feeling. Marcus Fairmont was the brother of a woman who'd humiliated her, the CEO of a company that needed her more than she needed them. Any awareness of him as a man rather than a problem to be solved was dangerous and inappropriate. Don't thank me yet, Naomi said, her voice cooler than before. Thank me in a year when you've actually done the work. After Marcus left, Tasha entered the conference room with raised eyebrows. Well, we're proceeding with the partnership, with modifications. What kind of modifications? Naomi explained the personal guarantee, watching Tasha's expression shift from confusion to shock to dawning admiration. You magnificent, terrifying woman, Tasha said finally. You just turned a $5 billion business deal into a $2 billion character test. That's some next-level chess. He'll either rise to the occasion or he'll fail spectacularly. Either way, we win. And if he succeeds, if Marcus Fairmont actually becomes the man he claims he wants to be? Naomi didn't answer immediately. She thought about Marcus's story about his grandmother, about his visible shame at his own failure, about the way his hand had felt against hers, warm and solid and surprisingly right. She thought about the way he'd looked at her when she mentioned doing this alone, with something that looked like admiration and sadness mixed together. If he succeeds, Naomi said finally, then maybe the world is capable of more change than I thought. But even as she said the words, she felt her daughters kicking against her ribs, reminding her that in 10 weeks she'd be responsible for 2 tiny humans who would inherit whatever world she and men like Marcus Fairmont created. The stakes weren't just about business anymore. They were about the future her daughters would grow up in. And Naomi Williams was just getting started on shaping that future into something worth inheriting. The CBS studio was kept deliberately cold, but Naomi felt sweat gathering at the small of her back as the makeup artist touched up her foundation. 4 o'clock had arrived faster than she'd anticipated. The hours between Marcus's departure and now consumed by legal reviews, contract revisions, and 3 separate calls with board members who wanted to understand why she was proceeding with a partnership after such public humiliation. You're glowing, the makeup artist said, stepping back to admire her work. Pregnancy looks beautiful on you. Naomi managed a smile, though beautiful wasn't how she felt. Enormous, exhausted, and anxious were more accurate. Her daughters had been restless all day, their movements constant and increasingly uncomfortable. Dr. Martinez had warned her that stress could trigger early labor, and Naomi was acutely aware that sitting under studio lights for a national interview probably didn't qualify as the rest her doctor had recommended. Gayle King entered the studio with the kind of presence that filled spaces without effort. At 73, she still moved with energy that made everyone around her seem slower, more careful. She'd built a reputation on getting truth from people who'd perfected the art of evasion, and Naomi felt both grateful and terrified to be sitting across from her. "Naomi Williams," Gayle said warmly, taking her seat. "Thank you for doing this. I know it's been a difficult 24 hours. Thank you for having me, Gayle, and for being flexible about timing. I know this was last minute. When a story like yours breaks, timing is everything." Gayle's expression shifted into professional focus as the director called for quiet. "Just remember, this is a conversation. If you need a break, if anything becomes too much, just say the word." The cameras began rolling, and Gayle's famous opening materialized. Last night at Manhattan's Spring Horizon Charity Gala, a 60-second video captured an interaction that sparked a national conversation about race, class, and the treatment of Black women in corporate America. Naomi Williams, CEO of Williams Chen Technologies, was mistaken for event staff and publicly accused of theft by Madison Fairmont, sister of billionaire tech CEO Marcus Fairmont. The video has been viewed over 15 million times. Naomi Williams joins us now for her first interview since the incident. Naomi, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Gayle. Let's start with what happened. You attended this gala. Why were you there? Naomi had rehearsed this answer with Richard Park, but speaking it aloud still felt vulnerable. I was there to meet a potential business partner. Williams Chen Technologies has maintained a deliberately low profile for the past 3 years for security and privacy reasons. I thought I could attend a charity event without drawing attention, meet my colleague, and leave quietly. But that's not what happened. No. Madison Fairmont approached me at the dessert table and asked if I was supposed to be working. When I explained I was a guest, she accused me of crashing the event to steal from other attendees. Naomi kept her voice steady, factual. She said, and I quote, "That's what people like you do, isn't it?" Gayle's expression was carefully neutral, but Naomi saw the flash of recognition in her eyes. She knew exactly what people like you meant. What was going through your mind in that moment? Honestly, I was thinking about my daughters. Naomi placed her hand on her belly, feeling one of the twins shift. I'm 7.5 months pregnant with twin girls. And I was standing in that ballroom thinking about the world they're going to grow up in. The assumptions people will make about them because of their skin color. I was thinking that if I didn't stand up for myself in that moment, I'd be teaching them to accept that kind of treatment. You're doing this alone, is that right? Raising your daughters as a single mother? The question was gentle, but it still stung. Yes. Their father decided he wasn't ready for the commitment. That must be incredibly challenging, especially running a billion-dollar company. It's terrifying, Naomi admitted, surprised by her own honesty. Some nights I lie awake wondering how I'm going to manage 2 newborns and 3,000 employees, and a company that controls technology critical to national security. But then, I remember that Black women have been doing impossible things for centuries. My grandmother raised 6 children while working as a nurse and putting herself through college at night. If she could do that in the 1960s with a fraction of the resources I have now, I can figure this out. Gayle nodded, understanding in every line of her face. Let's talk about Marcus Fairmont. He was there when his sister said these things to you. What was his reaction? This was the delicate part, the moment where Naomi had to balance truth with strategy. He was silent. He didn't intervene until the situation had already escalated and other people were watching. I think he was shocked by his sister's behavior, but his silence felt like complicity. You met with him this morning. What did he say? He apologized. He took responsibility for his failure to defend me, and he acknowledged that what happened revealed blind spots in his own understanding of privilege and responsibility. Naomi chose her words carefully. Marcus Fairmont was raised in a world where people like his sister faced few consequences for their cruelty. But he's committed to being better, and I'm giving him the opportunity to prove that commitment is real. You're proceeding with the business partnership between your companies? Yes, with modifications. The partnership will continue, but we've added requirements around diversity and inclusion initiatives at Fairmont Industries. Madison Fairmont will issue a public apology and make a significant donation to organizations supporting Black women in technology. And Marcus has personally guaranteed that these changes will be meaningful and lasting, not just performative. Gail leaned forward slightly. What does personally guaranteed mean? It means if Fairmont Industries doesn't follow through on their commitments, Marcus Fairmont will personally be liable for $2 billion in damages. Naomi watched comprehension dawn on Gail's face. He's betting his personal fortune on his ability to create real change. That's extraordinary. Why are you giving him this chance? Because destroying Fairmont Industries would have punished 42,000 innocent employees who had nothing to do with what happened. And because I believe that accountability doesn't always require destruction. Sometimes it requires transformation. Naomi paused, feeling another Braxton Hicks contraction beginning. She breathed through it carefully before continuing. Madison Fairmont's cruelty revealed something systemic. A billionaire's sister felt comfortable hurling racism at a pregnant stranger because she'd never faced real consequences for that behavior. If all I do is walk away from the partnership, nothing changes. But if I use my leverage to force systemic change at one of America's largest defense contractors, maybe that creates a ripple effect. You're using your power strategically. I'm using my power the way my daughters will need to learn to use theirs. Not for revenge, but for justice. There's a difference. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering Naomi's background, her company's technology, her vision for the defense industry's future. But it was those early moments, her unflinching discussion of racism, her strategic mercy toward Marcus Fairmont, her acknowledgement of doing motherhood alone, that would dominate headlines and social media for the next week. After the cameras stopped rolling, Gail reached across to touch Naomi's hand. Off the record? You're handling this with more grace than most people could manage. But make sure you're taking care of yourself. Those babies need their mother healthy. I know. I'm trying to balance everything, but... Another contraction, stronger this time, cut off her words. Naomi pressed both hands against her belly, breathing carefully. How often are those happening? Gail's voice carried the authority of a woman who'd raised 2 children. Every 20 minutes or so. They're just Braxton Hicks. My doctor said they're normal. How long have you been having them? Since this morning. Gail exchanged a look with one of the producers. Naomi, I'm not a doctor, but I've had 2 children. If you've been having regular contractions all day, even if they're not painful, you should probably get checked. just to be safe. The suggestion triggered anxiety Naomi had been suppressing all day. She was 31 weeks pregnant, 7.5 months. The twins weren't due for another 9 weeks, and while Dr. Martinez had said babies could survive if born after 30 weeks, Naomi wasn't ready. The nursery was finished, but she hadn't packed a hospital bag. She hadn't finalized the maternity leave plan with her board. She hadn't... Her phone buzzed. Tasha. Madison Fairmont just posted on Instagram. You need to see this. Naomi opened Instagram to find Madison's account restored, the post uploaded 15 minutes ago while Naomi was being interviewed. The photo showed Madison on what looked like her apartment's balcony, wearing athleisure that probably cost $1,000, holding a coffee cup and looking pensive. The caption made Naomi's blood pressure spike. I want to address last night's unfortunate incident. I sincerely apologize if my words were taken out of context or caused offense. It was never my intention to make anyone uncomfortable. I was simply concerned about security at a high-profile event. As we've had issues with unauthorized individuals attending in the past, I hope we can all move forward with understanding and compassion. Misunderstood. Intentions. That's a learning moment. A growth mindset. The comments were a war zone. Supporters praising Madison's grace under pressure. Critics pointing out the non-apology's careful language. If my words were taken out of context, never my intention. Making Madison the victim rather than acknowledging actual wrongdoing. Celebrities weighing in on both sides. The entire internet dissecting every word. But what made Naomi's hands shake with fury was the phrase, unauthorized individuals. Madison was still, even in her apology, suggesting that Naomi hadn't belonged at that gala. Oh, hell no, Tasha's text continued. This is not the apology Marcus promised you. Naomi called Marcus Fairmont. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight. I just saw it. I'm on my way to Madison's apartment now. This is not what we agreed. No, it's not. Naomi forced herself to stay calm despite the rage boiling in her chest. You have 24 hours to fix this, Mr. Fairmont. A real apology that acknowledges what she actually said and why it was wrong. Or the deal is off, and that $2 billion personal guarantee becomes immediately payable. Naomi. Ms. Williams. Please let me handle Madison. She's my sister. She's stubborn, but I can make her understand. 24 hours, not a minute more. Naomi hung up, her hands trembling. Another contraction, this one sharp enough to make her gasp. Gail was immediately at her side, her producer already pulling out a phone. We're calling you a car to take you to the hospital, Gail said firmly. No arguments. I'm fine, it's just stress. Naomi Williams, you are 7 months pregnant with twins, and you've been having regular contractions all day while negotiating billion-dollar deals and doing national television interviews. You are not fine. You are going to the hospital right now. And if you argue with me, I will call your doctor myself. The maternal authority in Gail's voice broke through Naomi's resistance. She nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted and scared. Okay. Yes, hospital. The car ride to Mount Sinai took 17 minutes, but each one felt eternal. Naomi watched Madison's Instagram post continue to blow up on her phone. Now at 2.3 million likes, the comments section descending into chaos. Madison Fairmont was trending alongside Naomi Williams. The internet divided between people who accepted the non-apology and those who recognized it as exactly what it was, an attempt to avoid real accountability. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize, but the 212 area code suggested New York. She answered. Ms. Williams? This is Diane Fairmont, Marcus's mother. Naomi felt her stomach drop. Mrs. Fairmont? I saw your interview with Gayle King just now, and I saw Madison's Instagram post. Diane Fairmont's voice carried the crisp authority of old money and finishing schools. I want you to know that her apology does not speak for our family. What Madison said to you was unconscionable, and her non-apology makes it worse. The unexpected support left Naomi momentarily speechless. I thank you, Mrs. Fairmont. That means more than you know. I'm calling because Marcus told me about the personal guarantee he signed. $2 billion if Fairmont Industries fails to implement real change. Diane paused. That could destroy my son financially. Destroy everything he's built. I know. Good. Because Marcus needs that kind of accountability. He's brilliant, but he's been insulated his entire life from the consequences of remaining silent when he should speak up. That ends now. Diane's voice softened slightly. My own mother worked as a housekeeper, Ms. Williams. She cleaned houses for families who treated her like she was invisible. I built my life making sure my children understood that everyone deserves dignity, regardless of their position or their skin color. Somewhere along the way, Madison forgot that lesson, or chose to ignore it. Naomi felt another contraction building. Mrs. Fairmont, I appreciate this call, but I'm actually on my way to the hospital. Are you all right? Is the babies? Probably just stress, but I need to get checked. The car pulled up to Mount Sinai's emergency entrance. Of course, go, but Ms. Williams, I'll handle Madison. She's my daughter, and this is my responsibility. Whatever apology she gives will be genuine, or she'll find herself cut off from the family entirely. You have my word. After hanging up, Naomi sat in the car for a moment, processing Diane Fairmont's unexpected alliance. The matriarch of a billionaire family had just offered to disown her own daughter to support a woman that daughter had humiliated. It complicated the neat narrative of villainy Naomi had constructed, adding shades of gray she hadn't expected. The hospital check-in process was efficient but thorough. Within 30 minutes, Naomi was in an examination room wearing a hospital gown connected to monitors that tracked her baby's heartbeats and her contractions. Dr. Sophia Martinez entered with her characteristic calm authority, reviewing the monitor readings with practiced eyes. Your contractions are regular, every 18 minutes, lasting about 30 seconds each. That's more frequent than typical Braxton Hicks. Dr. Martinez performed a cervical exam with gentle efficiency. You're dilated 1 centimeter, which is borderline. I'm not seeing signs of active labor yet, but we need to monitor you carefully. What does that mean? Are the babies coming? Not today. Probably not this week. But your body is preparing earlier than we'd like. Dr. Martinez sat down, her expression serious but kind. Naomi, you're under enormous stress. I've seen the news coverage, and while I'm incredibly proud of how you're handling this situation, your babies need you to slow down. No more television interviews, no more high-stakes negotiations. You need bed rest, at least partial, for the next few weeks. I can't. You're in the middle of growing 2 human beings who will be born premature if you don't give your body the rest it needs. Dr. Martinez's voice was firm. These girls need more time to develop their lungs, their nervous systems. Every week they stay inside is critical. So unless you want to spend the next 9 weeks in the NICU watching your daughters struggle to breathe, you're going to let other people handle your company for a while. The words hit like cold water. Naomi had been so focused on fighting Madison Fairmont, on protecting her professional reputation, that she'd forgotten the most important thing, her daughter's health. How much bed rest? Modified. You can work from home, take video calls, do things that don't require physical presence or high stress. But no more 12-hour days at the office. No more standing for extended periods. No more situations that spike your cortisol levels. Dr. Martinez squeezed Naomi's hand gently. You're one of the most capable women I've ever met. But right now, your most important job is keeping these babies safe. Everything else is secondary. Naomi nodded, feeling tears threaten for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Okay. Yes, modified bed rest, whatever they need. Good. I'm going to keep you overnight for observation. Make sure these contractions don't progress. If everything looks stable by morning, you can go home with strict instructions about activity limits. Dr. Martinez stood, checking the monitors one more time. And Naomi, for what it's worth, what you're doing, holding powerful people accountable while showing mercy, that's the kind of mother your daughters need. But they also need you healthy and present, not exhausted and stressed into early labor. After Dr. Martinez left, Naomi lay in the hospital bed, listening to the steady rhythm of her daughter's heartbeats on the monitor. Two distinct patterns, slightly out of sync, both strong and fast and perfect. She placed her hands on her belly, feeling their movements, softer now, maybe reacting to the IV fluids and the calm of the hospital room. I'm sorry, she whispered. Mama's been so focused on fighting battles that she forgot you two are what matters most. That's going to change. Starting now. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus Fairmont. Just left Madison's apartment. She's agreed to record a proper apology tomorrow, admitting what she said was racist and wrong. No more non-apologies. No more excuses. I'm so sorry this happened. And I'm sorrier that my family made it worse before making it better. Then another text. Also heard you're in the hospital. Are you and the babies okay? Please let me know if there's anything you need. Naomi stared at the second message, surprised by the concern in his words. She typed back, Babies are fine, just need rest and less stress. Make sure Madison's apology is genuine. No more chances after this. His reply came quickly. Understood? And Naomi, thank you for not giving up on us completely. I know we don't deserve your mercy, but I promise you won't regret it. Outside her hospital window, Manhattan sparkled in the evening darkness. 8 million people living their lives unaware that somewhere in this massive city, a pregnant woman was betting billions of dollars that people could change. That accountability could coexist with mercy, that the world her daughters would inherit could be better than the one that existed tonight. Madison Fairmont had 24 hours to prove she understood the weight of her words. Marcus Fairmont had a year to prove his commitment to change was more than corporate performance. And Naomi Williams had 9 weeks, maybe less, to prepare for the arrival of 2 daughters who would grow up knowing their mother had fought for a better world, even when it cost her everything. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. But for tonight, in this hospital room with her daughter's heartbeats filling the silence, Naomi let herself rest. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tonight belonged to survival and hope, and the fierce love of a mother who would burn down empires to protect her children, even if it meant occasionally showing mercy to the people who'd tried to destroy her. Naomi's penthouse had never felt smaller. 4 days of modified bed rest had transformed her 6,500-square-foot sanctuary into a gilded cage. The view that usually calmed her, Manhattan spreading in all directions, the Hudson River catching afternoon light, now felt like a taunt. a reminder of everything happening beyond her reach while she was confined to her couch with her feet elevated and her laptop balanced precariously on a pillow over her enormous belly. Tasha had taken over the office, running daily operations with the efficiency Naomi had always known she possessed, but never fully appreciated. Video calls kept Naomi connected to critical decisions. But it wasn't the same as being there, reading body language in meetings, feeling the pulse of her company. Williams Chen Technologies was her third child, born from nothing 5 years ago, and watching it function without her physical presence felt like abandonment, even though intellectually she knew this was necessary. Her daughters had other ideas about what was necessary. They'd been calmer since the hospital stay, their movements gentler, as if they too understood that everyone needed to cooperate right now. Naomi talked to them constantly, explaining board meetings and contract negotiations, telling them about their grandmother who died before they could meet her, promising them a world where their skin color wouldn't determine their worth. Though honestly, she said aloud to her belly, your mama's track record on that promise isn't great so far. Her phone chimed. A calendar reminder. Madison Fairmont's public apology, scheduled to go live at 3 p.m. 48 hours after the disastrous Instagram non-apology. 24 hours past Naomi's original deadline. Marcus had begged for the extension, explaining that Madison had fought every word of accountability before Diane Fairmont had threatened to cut her off entirely from the family trust fund. Naomi pulled up Madison's YouTube channel, created fresh yesterday. 0 subscribers to start, now sitting at 3.2 million after the announcement that her apology would be posted there. The video went live at exactly 3 p.m. Madison sat in what looked like a therapist's office, the kind of deliberately neutral space designed not to distract from difficult conversations. She wore minimal makeup, her hair pulled back simply, dressed in a plain gray sweater. None of the designer polish from the Instagram post. She looked younger without all the armor and considerably less certain of herself. "My name is Madison Fairmont," she began, her voice quieter than Naomi remembered. 4 days ago, at the Spring Horizon Charity Gala, I said something unforgivable to Naomi Williams, a pregnant black woman who was attending as a guest. I accused her of being staff, of crashing the event to steal from attendees. I said, "That's what people like you do, isn't it?" Those words were racist. They were cruel. And they revealed something ugly about assumptions I've carried my entire life. Assumptions about who belongs in certain spaces and who doesn't, based solely on the color of their skin. Madison paused, and Naomi could see her hands shaking slightly in her lap. I've spent the past 4 days in intensive conversations with a therapist who specializes in racial bias. Not because my family forced me, though they did threaten me, but because watching that video of myself, hearing my own words, I didn't recognize the person I'd become. Or maybe I finally recognized her, and I was horrified. She looked directly at the camera. Naomi Williams built an $8 billion company from nothing. She holds patents that are revolutionizing artificial intelligence. She's 7.5 months pregnant with twins, doing it alone, and she showed up at that gala with more grace and dignity than I've demonstrated in my entire privileged life. And I treated her like she was invisible, like she was a threat. Because I've been raised in a world that taught me people who look like her don't belong in spaces like that gala. That's wrong. It's always been wrong. And I'm deeply, profoundly sorry for perpetuating that wrongness. Madison's voice cracked slightly. I'm donating $1 million to organizations supporting Black women in technology. Not because it will fix what I did, but because it's the beginning of using my privilege to repair damage instead of causing it. I'm entering a year-long program focused on understanding systemic racism and how to actively work against it. And I'm stepping away from all social media and public events until I've done the internal work necessary to ensure I never treat another human being the way I treated Ms. Williams. She took a shaky breath. To Naomi Williams, I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that your daughters will grow up in a world where I'm trying to be better, where I'm working to dismantle the assumptions that led to that terrible moment. Thank you for holding me accountable. I hope someday my actions will prove I learned from your mercy. The video ended. Naomi sat in silence, watching the view count climb, already at 847,000 views in the first 3 minutes. The comments section was surprisingly civil, people acknowledging that while Madison's apology didn't erase harm, it was leagues better than most public apologies from wealthy white people. Her phone rang. Marcus Fairmont. "Did you watch it?" he asked without preamble. "I'm watching the view count hit 1 million as we speak." She meant every word. I sat with her through 23 takes before she got it right. Not because she was performing, but because she kept breaking down. This whole experience has shattered something in Madison, in the best possible way. Marcus paused. "How are you feeling? How are the babies?" "We're fine. Bored out of my mind with bed rest, but fine." Naomi shifted on the couch, trying to find a comfortable position that didn't exist anymore. "The apology was good. Better than I expected. Will it be enough?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications beyond Madison's apology. Naomi knew Marcus was asking about more than whether she'd maintain the partnership. He was asking if she believed in the possibility of genuine transformation, if mercy could coexist with accountability. "Ask me in a year," she said finally, "after I've seen whether Madison's actions match her words. After I've seen whether your company follows through on the diversity initiatives. After I've seen if this was all just performance to salvage a deal." "It's not performance, Naomi." The use of her first name was intimate, familiar in a way that made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. Would it be all right if I came by? I have something for you." "What kind of something?" "A thank you. For believing people can change when you had every reason not to." Naomi should have said no. Should have maintained professional distance. Should have remembered that Marcus Fairmont was the brother of a woman who'd humiliated her, the CEO of a company that needed her more than she needed them. But the past 4 days alone in this penthouse had been isolating in ways she hadn't anticipated. And the genuine concern in Marcus's voice touched something she'd been trying to ignore. "Okay. But I'm not entertaining. You get me on the couch in pajamas with my feet up. That's all I'm asking for." He arrived 40 minutes later, carrying 2 bags that smelled incredible. Naomi's doorman, Marcus, she really needed to stop confusing the 2 Marcuses in her life, called up for permission, and when CEO Marcus appeared at her door, he looked almost as exhausted as she felt. "I brought food from Gramercy Tavern," he said, setting the bags on her kitchen counter. "I remembered you mentioning during one of our early negotiation calls that their roasted chicken was your favorite, back when you could eat without heartburn." The fact that he'd remembered such a small detail from a conversation months ago caught Naomi off guard. "I can't believe you recalled that." "I remember everything about our conversations." Marcus began unpacking containers with the careful movements of someone trying to be helpful without overstepping. "You also mentioned loving their carrot cake, so I got that too. Though I don't know if you're supposed to have sugar this late in pregnancy." "I'm supposed to have whatever keeps me from losing my mind on bed rest." Naomi accepted the plate he'd prepared. the chicken still warm and perfectly seasoned. The first bite made her close her eyes in appreciation. Oh God, I haven't had real food in days. Tasha keeps bringing me healthy soups that taste like sadness. Marcus laughed, the sound warm and genuine. He'd changed since the gala, or maybe Naomi was just seeing him differently now. He wore jeans and a simple button-down instead of his usual corporate armor, and the casual clothing made him seem more human, less the polished CEO from magazine covers. "Can I sit?" he asked, gesturing to the other end of her sectional couch. "Please." They ate in comfortable silence for several minutes, the city spreading beyond the windows like a glittering promise. Naomi found herself studying Marcus in her peripheral vision. The way he ate with careful precision, the slight tension he carried in his shoulders, the way his eyes kept drifting to her belly with something that looked like concern mixed with wonder. "You're staring at my stomach," she said finally. "Sorry, it's remarkable. Growing two humans while running $1 billion company." Marcus set down his fork. "My sister Rebecca, she has 3 kids, and she said each pregnancy felt like her body was hosting a hostile takeover. How are you managing?" "Some days better than others. Today they've been calm, which is a relief after the hospital scare." Naomi placed her hand where one of the twins was currently pressing what felt like a foot against her ribs. "They respond to voices. Want to feel?" The offer surprised them both. Marcus looked at her with something approaching awe. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to." "It's fine. Give me your hand." Marcus moved closer, the couch cushion dipping under his weight, bringing him near enough that Naomi could smell his cologne. Something subtle and expensive that made her more aware of his proximity than she wanted to be. She guided his hand to the spot where Baby A, as Dr. Martinez called her, was currently staging a protest about Naomi's posture. "There," Naomi said softly. "Feel that? She's pushing against—" The kick was strong enough to make Marcus's eyes widen. "Oh my God, wow, she's really in there. 2 of them. Baby B is usually quieter, but wait." Naomi moved his hand lower. "There, that's her." Marcus's expression transformed into something Naomi couldn't quite name. Reverence, maybe? Or the recognition of something profoundly important happening beneath his palm. His hand was warm against her belly, larger than Trevor's had been, steadier. He stayed still, feeling both babies move, and when he looked up at Naomi, his eyes were bright with emotion. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me be part of this moment. It's just babies kicking. No, it's life. It's everything that matters condensed into 2 tiny humans who don't even know yet how extraordinary their mother is." Marcus's hand was still on her belly, his thumb moving in small, unconscious circles. "Naomi, I need to tell you something." "That sounds ominous." "It's not. It's just, I can't stop thinking about that night at the gala. Not just about Madison's behavior, but about you. The way you stood there with such dignity while my sister tried to destroy you. The way you walked out with your head high, already planning how to turn humiliation into leverage." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've been in business for 15 years, negotiated hundreds of deals, met thousands of people, but I've never met anyone like you." Naomi felt her heart rate accelerate. "Marcus, I'm not saying this to manipulate you or to influence our business relationship. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I think you should know that what happened at that gala changed me, not just professionally, personally. You made me see myself clearly for the first time in years, and what I saw wasn't flattering, But you also showed me mercy when you had every reason not to. And that kind of strength, that kind of grace, that's... He stopped, seemed to realize his hand was still on her belly, and moved it away reluctantly. Sorry. I'm overstepping. You're not. Naomi's voice came out softer than she intended. But Marcus, this is complicated. I'm 7.5 months pregnant. You're the CEO of a company my company is partnering with. Your sister humiliated me 4 days ago. Whatever this is, she gestured between them. It can't happen right now. I know. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that when I signed that personal guarantee, when I bet $2 billion on my ability to change, I wasn't just thinking about my company or my employees. Marcus met her eyes directly. I was thinking about becoming someone worthy of your respect. Maybe someday he caught himself. Someone you could trust. One of the babies kicked again, hard enough to make Naomi wince. Marcus noticed immediately, his concern evident. Are you all right? Should I call your doctor? I'm fine. She just doesn't like when I get emotional. Naomi placed her hand over the spot where baby A was apparently staging a full rebellion now. And you're making me emotional, which is unfair because I'm supposed to be on modified bed rest with minimal stress. Right. Yes. I'll stop talking about feelings and stick to business. But Marcus's smile suggested he understood that something had shifted between them. Some acknowledgement of attraction that couldn't be acted on, but couldn't be ignored either. They finished eating while discussing safer topics. The contract implementation timeline, the diversity officer position. Fairmont Industries was advertising the upcoming announcement of their partnership. But underneath the professional conversation, Naomi felt a current of awareness she hadn't experienced since the early days with Trevor. Back when she'd still believed he was someone capable of loving all of her, not just the successful parts. Marcus Fairmont was different from Trevor in every way that mattered. He'd seen her at her most vulnerable and hadn't flinched. He'd witnessed her wield power and been awed rather than intimidated. He'd felt her daughters kick and looked at her like she was performing miracles instead of just existing in a pregnant body. But he was also the brother of a woman who'd called her a thief. The CEO of a company hanging by a thread. A man from a world of inherited wealth and assumed belonging that had never included people who looked like Naomi. The complications were infinite. The timing, impossible. I should go, Marcus said finally, glancing at his watch. It's almost 6 and you need rest. Thank you for the food and for, Naomi gestured vaguely, everything else. Can I come back? The question was tentative, hopeful. Not for anything inappropriate, just to check on you. Make sure you're not going crazy from bed rest. Naomi knew she should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should protect herself from complications she couldn't afford with 2 babies arriving in less than 8 weeks. But the thought of another 4 days alone in this penthouse, with only video calls and Tasha's well-meaning soup deliveries, felt unbearable. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, she heard herself say. 7 p.m. But Marcus, this is just friends, he supplied quickly. Checking on a friend who's having a complicated pregnancy while managing a corporate crisis. Nothing more. Nothing more, Naomi echoed, though the way he was looking at her suggested they both knew that was a lie. After Marcus left, Naomi lay on her couch, watching the city lights begin to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Her phone buzzed with notifications. The Madison apology video was now at 12 million views, trending on every social media platform, generating think pieces about accountability and privilege and whether public apologies meant anything without sustained action. But Naomi found herself thinking instead about Marcus's hand on her belly, the wonder in his eyes when he'd felt her daughter's kick, the careful way he'd said, "Someone you could trust," while clearly meaning something more. She'd spent 5 years building walls around her heart after watching her parents die, after Trevor had walked away, after learning that the world would judge her before she spoke and that trusting the wrong people could destroy everything she'd built. Those walls had served her well, kept her safe, let her focus on building an empire without the distraction of emotional vulnerability. But lying here with her daughters moving inside her, she wondered if maybe those walls had also kept out possibilities worth considering. If maybe mercy and accountability could coexist not just in business, but in personal relationships. If maybe the man whose sister had humiliated her could also be someone capable of seeing her completely and loving what he found. "Your mama's in trouble," she whispered to her belly, "because she's starting to have feelings for someone she absolutely cannot have feelings for right now." Baby A kicked in response, whether in agreement or protest, Naomi couldn't tell. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Thank you for tonight, for the food, the conversation, and letting me feel those remarkable daughters of yours. Sleep well, Naomi. You're doing something extraordinary." She stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "See you Tuesday. Bring dessert." His reply came immediately. "I'll bring the entire Gramercy Tavern pastry menu if it makes you smile." Naomi did smile then, despite everything. The complications, the impossibility, the terrible timing. Because for the first time since Trevor had walked out 6 months ago, someone was seeing her not as a CEO to respect or a pregnant woman to pity, but as a whole person worth knowing, worth pursuing, worth $2 billion in personal guarantees and careful visits bearing her favorite food. Outside her windows, Manhattan glittered with 8 million stories, and Naomi was beginning to realize hers might include a chapter she hadn't planned for. One that started with public humiliation and evolved into something that looked suspiciously like hope. But first, she had 6 more weeks of modified bed rest to survive, a partnership to finalize, and 2 daughters to bring safely into the world. Everything else, including whatever was developing between her and Marcus Fairmont, would have to wait. Even if waiting was becoming harder with every text message, every careful touch, every moment when he looked at her like she was the most remarkable woman he'd ever met.